I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to season 32, episode 22. 34, episode 22 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. I'm so good at this. I've been doing this for so many years. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Artem.
My name is Riley.
I'm Jason.
And in today's episode, Susan from Oakland asks how to get her playgroups to learn the rules.
Let us know when you find out.
Mike from Ithaca, New York responds with some advice to some previous emails. And from the archive 2020, Costa from Adelaide shares a horror story full of red flags. If you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, including like your campaign updates. Like some people have been like sending us things about their campaigns or questions. We would really like updates on those. Or if you just want to be like, hey, this is what's happening in my vampire campaign right now. These two are like having an affair and blah, blah, blah. Like, especially like the naughty details. We love that.
Yeah, let's turn half of our podcast into a messy gossip about your characters in the game. I would be so into that.
I'm here for
Yeah.
this.
And real quick, for Susan, our general laughter was, we'll have answers for you. Don't tune out. All right. We got you. But it's because we've all experienced players just aggressively refusing to learn the rules of what we're doing.
Susan, I sincerely don't know if there's an answer to this question, and I'm gonna proceed accordingly.
Don't worry, I'll answer anything. I'm a middle-aged cisgender white man.
All right. So you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. You can also drop things in the mailbag channel of the Discord, which is where I got most of our content for tonight. Please send in comments, stories, questions, thoughts, musings, whatever you'd like.
Poems.
100% poems.
If you could write your questions in the form of the Muppets presenting it to us, you'll definitely get on the air.
Preferred, actually.
100%, yeah.
Which one of us will be the human, and then who all of you are faced by Muppets?
I'll be human.
Okay.
I'm always the.
I think that might be the
person.
case currently.
Yeah.
I think you might be the human with three Muppets.
Yeah, that's,
tonight.
that's generally what it is. Yeah.
I mean,
Two of us are blue.
There's a
Literally.
blue
Yeah.
hair table.
Yes.
So
All right. Announcements. We're coming up on the end of season 34, so we will end this season near the end of December with episode 25, just like usual. And as always, we'll take our 2-week break after that. Our next game days is going to be January 11th. So go ahead and go to the Discord. You can sign up to run or play games there. There's one game posted now. We've just kind of started getting it rolling. People voted and said that the 11th was the best day. So I'm going to be trying to run something. I'm very excited. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Because, I need to run something other than Starscape. I love it, but typing it is a thing. It's a whole thing. All right, Indie Designer of the Month. Our Indie Designer of the Month is Megan Dawson's-Jaffe. They. Megan Dawson-Jaffe is an LGBTQIA designer behind Nerdy City Games. You can find their work by searching Nerdy City on DriveThruRPG or looking for Nerdy City on Instagram. This week we are talking about RPG Nasty,
Yeah.
which is not what you're thinking. I thought so too. I was very excited. I clicked on the name.
You don't know what I'm thinking.
It's the video nasties, babe.
It is. It is the storytelling game of VHS horror. So
horror.
horror.
Yeah, that's why it's
There's an
not the
additional
good
R.
kind.
Thank you. Shameful, repulsive, offensive, disgusting.
Again, that's not still taking us away from the other concept of
I'm in. I'm
The
still
next-
in.
The next game in the Remember-X line, RPG Nasty, is a one-shot storytelling game designed to evoke the bottom-of-the-barrel VHS horror of the early 1980s.
Horror.
This schlocky masterpiece, renowned in Britain as the moral panic of the video nasties. This is This one-shot game, you and your group will collaborate to create a crazy slasher and play the hapless victims. Don't expect to survive. You rack up valuable tracking errors by dying on the most gross, stupid, and over-the-top ways. In RPG Nasty, dying is where the fun starts.
I love this.
And this is available at nerdycity.com.
I just
I
want to say
love
right now that
this.
Megan Dalton Jaffe, the idea of making tracking errors on the tape a metric in a
Yeah.
game, that is chef's kiss. That is, you know what? People who are not Megan Dalton Jaffe, that is the kind of thing that gets you in the Indie Designer of the Month category.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Yeah.
pay
Yep.
attention and take notes.
The gauntlet has been thrown
they,
down.
they have set the bar.
Mm.
So
Amazing. All right. And mailbag number 1.
I'll do it. Hey, hi, and hello, Happy Jackers. Long timer / first timer. I am that kind of RPGer who loves exploring new settings and new systems. I love your Designer of the Month segments, like one we just talked about. I am as interested in the mechanics as I am in the immersive nature and roleplay. Like many, I have used RPGs to create ongoing fun connections with existing friends. I run 2 long-running groups that I created and GM. Both groups are made up of people who are not otherwise engaged in the hobby. We are all friends and love getting together, especially because we all live far apart. One group even went on vacation together last year. Woohoo! That's actually very fun and cute.
Yeah.
All right, but my struggle is that my players don't really make an effort to deeply learn the systems we are using. They know the basics, but don't really think about how to use the mechanics more effectively or creatively. For example, with one group, we are using Savage Worlds. They understand the wild die, the bennies, and exploding dice. They don't think about using modifiers like wild attack, supporting rolls, or aiming. How conditions like vulnerable, distracted, and fatigue work, or how to use tests to create advantages. It's been 5 years.
Oh my.
With my other group, we are using Cortex Prime, and I have to constantly cue them to use SFX or other mechanics to improve their chances of success. I find myself spoon-feeding the rules. I have made cheat sheets and checklists. Well, there goes my answer.
Oh, dang.
Short of blowing up at them, what strategies do you use to get all your players to engage the RPG rules systems? Anything you suggest has got to be better than what I am doing. Keeping the dice rolling. Susan in Oakland, aka Miss Malachi on Discord.
Maybe they play once a year and they've only played 5 times.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's
That's probably not it. No.
Maybe they are trying to communicate something, and the only way they can think to do it is by not learning the rules of the game they're playing. It's like a weird code.
No, that's
Don't
not
think
it.
that-
I don't
okay.
think that's it.
I will
I
say,
mean-
I don't know what it is about Savage World specifically, but I cannot wrap my head around Savage World rules. It's like, it's so... I don't think it's a hard system, but for some reason it's not intuitive to how I learn role-playing games, and I really struggle with it. I have a really hard time. But 5 years is a long time to play a game you're not understanding.
Yeah, I'm playing any game. Like,
Yeah.
you could play 5 years of GURPS and get it. Like,
Actually, like, if you're not trying to, like, run the game, it's pretty simple.
okay, 5 years of Shadowrun.
It's...
You would learn Shadowrun.
Well, Susan in Oakland.
Yeah.
I feel like I think really get this question from 3 different points of view for me. The first I would say is that, like, I think blowing up at your players isn't the way to address this. But I do feel like there's something that, Riley, I think maybe you're actually hitting at this. There is something being communicated here. I think, like, for me, it's like hack your game. Play the game that they're playing. If they understand 3 core rules, cool. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I think the onus on the GM to teach the rules is, like, really a huge pressure, and it's something we all end up having to do. And it's like, usually, I mean, it's like even back in the day, it's like the one person who would buy the manual would be the GM, and then the one person who would explain and do everything would be the GM. So it's like you're already kind of overweight, like weighed down by so many responsibilities.
The trick with that, I think, is at least in a game like Savage Worlds or Shadowrun or GURPS or Palladium, like any of those like kind of old school crunchier games. I still think of Savage Worlds as old school because I know there's like recent versions. You're probably playing the most recent version, but its design is old fashioned, right?
Mhm.
The way that it's designed is old fashioned. So the tack that, like, saying like, okay, well, let's play to these 3 rules that they know. The problem is the dice system doesn't work that well, and you need to aim. Right? You need to prep. You need to do a test. Like like the amount that I've played Savage Worlds, like it doesn't work well if you don't take every little advantage you can, because in my opinion, the dice system is poorly designed. having them. The solution I was going to suggest, we're just outlining more and more problems, but the solution I was going to suggest is have somebody be the aim bot, right? Somebody like put it on their character, on their like a post-it note that says, "Did you aim?" Right? Like something like that, and somebody else is the task bot, right? Of like, did you do a task for this or test or whatever it's called, like for an extended benefit or something like that, so that they can optimize and get this stuff. Because if they don't do those things, the results of the dice rolls are going to be really frustrating because they'll just keep flailing.
I see what you're saying with that, but I don't know if that actually solves what like the actual Susan's question is, which is not so much just like knowing which things their players have, but also using them creatively. So like yes, I know. Did you aim? Did you do this? Like that's like if someone's doing the same task over and over again and then accidentally not do like
I get the
not
sense
on the
that
same
Susan's already
repeated task.
tried these
No,
kind
no,
of
no.
things.
What I mean is, I'm gonna make Riley in charge of everybody aiming.
Yeah.
Right? And like somebody's setting up, like, okay, and then you're gonna remember it's your job to check if they've aimed.
Yeah.
Right?
What I'm saying is, yes, I get and I think that's a useful thing to have. Yes, absolutely. I'm not trying to like negate what you're saying.
Sure.
I'm trying to add on top of it, which is that that's great for things that repeatedly happen. And like for example, like to use a different system, to use like D&D, like, hey, is the rogue always using sneak attack? Right? That's the thing. But I think what Susan was saying here was about the phrase was where was it? More effectively or creatively. So I think like the or creatively makes me think that it's like, hey, really be aware of all the things that the rules say you're allowed to do, so that you can do different. So it's not just like don't forget to aim every time. It's also like, hey, when we're in a situation, you only think you have like 3 options available, so you're always doing them. But the system we're playing allows for a lot of different solutions to these issues or ways to go around them.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I'm saying like maybe there's a way to like how can we get people to be aware of, like right now we're talking about how to get them to remember to play with like their 3 best toys properly.
Sure.
But we're trying to say like, hey guys, there's other toys in your box that the rules are allowing you to do.
Well, one thing that came up recently for me in running Wild Talents is so a couple players really like dug in and grokked the rules and read everything they could and had a good time with that. And then a couple players were feeling a little stuck and confused, and understandably, like Wild Talents is not it's not a criticism of my players who didn't get the rules, right? But there were things that I found, and again, they've been playing for 5 years, which I don't know how helpful this advice is. But what I was able to do was, in my mind, I was thinking like, you can spend a willpower and juice this up and like turn it into an area effect, but you're thinking about like, oh, well, I can only punch this one guy. And so I had a bad guy in a situation where it wasn't going to be treated as punitive, right? Like I wasn't going to turn it into, like I'm punishing you for not knowing this, right? But
Right.
I want you to know this is a thing you can do, right? And so there were a couple moments where I said, okay, the villain is going to fire this laser out of his hand, and I want to turn it into 3 lasers, so he's going to spend a willpower point and hit all 3 of you with his lasers, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, does our willpower do that? I'm like, yeah, bro.
Oh, that's cool.
It does.
Do you know what? That's so. I would to add to that because I feel like I feel like to me all these are like super good suggestions. I have a feeling like Susan is like almost talking about this in a slightly abstract way, where I feel like Susan maybe has tried this stuff.
Yeah, probably.
And so my thought is like, I think Susan, it sounds to me like you might be feeling a bit frustrated because you feel like there's so much for the players to still take advantage of.
Yeah.
But they seem to be like, nah, I like to explode the dice and I like using bennies. That's fun for me.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, and somebody kind of dropped this into the chat, and you guys were just mentioning too, a way to introduce new mechanics is like finding an excuse to do that, like you were saying with the little lasers and no use of willpower.
Yeah.
Like I got some good advice a while ago about like introducing mechanics into a game, and it's like, for example, right now I'm running an actual play for this very wonderful network.
Tell us about that.
It's called What About Bob's, and it's a Mouse Ritter RPG actual play. It's a cute little OSR game with lots of mice in it, but I'm also tossing in a bunch of PBTA style, prompt based, story driven kind of things because it's a very.
Although to be fair, there are like 5 rules. in
There
most
are
of it.
5 rules, so I'm
I'm
not.
only learning 3 of them.
I won't purport to say
I'm
that
not
it's a
playing this
very
game.
complicated game. But that being said,
I love Mouse Ritter. Okay, that's not a diss.
yeah. But that being said, the way I've been sort of trying to pace it out is that finding an opportune moment for people to learn how to do combat. Like I wanted them to just start playing the game as soon as possible. So once we created characters, we just went into the adventure, and then we had an opportunity to fight some snakes, and that's when they learn how combat works, or they had an opportunity to interact with characters and to do what I kind of call like, tell me what happens if you fail kind of mechanic, which is again like this game has 3 stats that those are the stats you roll against for everything, right? So it's a serious binary. You either succeed or you fail. So how do you make them more dynamic in a storytelling way? It's like, cool, you tell me what is the trade-off, and then you
Right.
narrate that trade-off as it happens. So it ends up becoming a more evocative thing.
Yeah.
But I only introduced that once we actually needed to use it. Once somebody was trying to convince somebody, or somebody was trying to offer somebody something. So it's like the mechanics are only being introduced when they're going to be useful.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, even if you have a group that's played for 5 years together, there's some opportunity to do like, oh, today we're doing a naval adventure, and there's going to be things that get on this, and we're going to be dealing with the weather, and we're going to
Yeah.
be dealing with distances and stuff like. And then the players are going to be like, well, how do we do that with bennies and exploding dice? It's like,
Yeah.
well, there's this additional thing we can use, for example. I don't know.
You know,
Or
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say the opposite thing is, in that situation, maybe kind of based off what you were saying, and you trigger something in my brain, which is, don't worry about having them memorize all the mechanics in that moment. If you know them, if you've been running the game for 5 years, you know the system. Instead of saying like know the mechanics of what you want to do, say what do you want to do, and then have them narrate what they want to do, and then you can go. Now, like I get as a GM, it's hard to know every possible thing that every possible like class or character type can do, but at the same time, if you know the things you're naming, so someone's like, oh, I kind of want to make this happen, and then the system you're running, you can go, okay, well then in that case, make this wild attack or do this kind of thing. I'm gonna have you roll this dice to do this, and like so instead of having them memorize the mechanics what they want to do, just have them narrate their actions, and then you as the GM tell them what they want, what they should be rolling, what they should be doing with it.
Yeah.
And then like over time they might learn, okay, that's how I do this thing, or if not, at least they're like thinking of creative ways to do things with their characters, and then you as the GM can like referee what the actual like role is going to be.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I will say this is a little bit what I ran into with Wild Talents, where I like the couple of players who I knew better, right? I went to and said, I'm a little like, it wasn't that I was frustrated, but I was like, I'm exhausted, right? With having to like, is there anything you and I can do that would sort of meet us halfway? Where like, I didn't need the whole table to know, because I knew it's a complicated system and I didn't expect everyone to learn the rules, right? But if I could get like 1 or 2 people on like as assistant GM, just to know the rules, right? And by the end, nobody fully understood armor. I barely understood armor, and I house ruled it to make it work the way I thought it should.
Yeah.
Right? So like, there's a bunch of stuff in that game that doesn't make sense, and I don't blame anyone for that. But I recruited a couple of them to be like, hey, remember when you tried to do the thing and you were sort of like wanting it to do this other thing? Like, if that comes up again, I was thinking maybe I could set up an explanation and be like, oh, if you want to do that, spend a willpower, and then this can happen, and then this can, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, I'll do, like, they were my ringer.
Yeah.
Right? Where like I didn't need everybody. I didn't need to sit down and have a grown-up conversation with everybody, because it was a lot, right? It's a lot of rules, and I wasn't mad that people didn't understand the rules, because it was understandable.
Yeah.
There were not 5 rules, right? There's 50,
Yeah.
and they're all applicable all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot, and that's understandable. But the fact that I could get a couple people on, or even just one person saying, oh, what if I aim, and if I aim and then spill more power to make it go faster? Is that a thing that I could do? I'm like, fuck yeah, you can. Let's go. And then other people at the table were like, wait, we can do that? Is that a special thing they have? No, That's in
Nope.
the rules.
Yeah.
It's on the cheat sheet that is in front of you.
They're playing a subclass called Rules Readers.
Yeah.
It's a very rare and unheard of group. Yeah, we had a good suggestion from the audience, by the way, from the chat. That was based off what you were saying, Artem. So Davey Mac in the chat said that if they know what rules are going to be used in a session, they'll paperclip that section of the book or
Right.
tab it so that they can easily reference it for the players during the session if need be. And that's kind of like that is sometimes part of GM prep if you're like or GM prep if you know that you're running a thing that might not be as well known to people. But yeah,
And I will say, I think that also, I think helps you that might help you as a GM to have like like a more confident, streamlined sense of what's going on in the sessions. Like this session is going to be about exploration, and then so sort of like that's what we're leaning into. We're sailing across the seas. Or this session is going to be about diplomacy. We're got a big ball. We're trying to like ply information out of people. So it's kind of fun to like sort of say, cool, we're going to be really using all of these mechanics with one specific type of engagement.
And I realized I did sort of create a cheat sheet, but it wasn't the same cheat sheet for everyone.
Yeah.
So there was like one day that I had to spend doing a little bit of prep, but I made sure the person who needed to have like explosives and area effect, like there was a little short rundown of those rules, right? And the person who needed to do like long range sneak attack kind of stuff, like they got their own cheat sheet, which again was some upfront labor. And I don't know if Susan wants to put that time in after 5 years of people not learning the rules. That is understandably frustrating.
Yeah.
But
it sounds like Susan has made cheat sheets and checklists too. So
No, I
she may
know.
have tried that. And
my-
I'm backing you up. I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
criticizing you.
But my thing there was when I made a generic cheat sheet, it was still too much
Yeah.
because it's wild talents, but it was still too much, right? It was a full page, and even that, like if you were trying to find the one thing you needed in this moment, there was a full page of what these things could do, and there was a full page of what willpower could do, separate from that, right?
That's a
So
lot.
my cheat sheet kept expanding because I was like, okay, what is the thing they need to know all the time? Oh, everything, right? Because it's not easy. And so when I was able to cook that down to guys, and I, at one point I did say, y'all need to find Jesus and willpower, right? Like you have to know the willpower rules. That's it, right? Like we had that conversation at one point.
So important.
And I said, I'm going to help you with everything else. You got to do this for me.
Yeah.
You got to learn the willpower rules. And, we got there, right? And then everyone, I was able to then also give some little cheat sheets of like, here's the thing that just Sarah's character can do, right? That's stuff like that.
Yeah, I am the player that Sarah is complaining about.
Susan.
That's how much you don't read the rules.
You
You
just
don't
said
even know.
Sarah, so it was in my brain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's how much you don't read the rules. You also
I also don't
email.
remember the email name. Yeah, I just have such a terrible memory for things like that. Now, if you ask me like minute details about the world we've created, like that, I will remember forever. But the exact mechanics, like I've gotten better at it over the years, and playing lots of different systems has improved my ability to do it. I also am better at knowing what I'm going to forget, so I know what to write down.
Yeah.
Which is a skill of knowing like, oh, these grapple rules, never going to remember them. I will write these down or flag the page or whatever it is, so that as a player, like I'm not as annoying. It was not something I was aware of at first, till since we were doing actual plays, people wrote in really angry at me about it.
Yeah. Oh.
Players, unless your GM has invited you to grapple, don't ask to
Don't do
grapple.
it.
Just don't do it.
Never grapple. So yeah, I think
Don't eat scrap.
yeah.
So you've decided to grapple.
Good luck.
I remember like our L5R campaigns, and like back in the day, we didn't do APs like super regularly. Like we'd do some for a couple weeks, and then life would get in the way because we didn't stream or anything, because it was kind of before streaming because we're old. So we'd record a bunch, and then like
We used to play games by letter. We'd mail them to the audience, tell them what we did.
back and forth.
With light candles.
Yes. So sometimes it would be a month or two between sessions. So then, of course, the small amount of things I'd memorized all disappeared. And then I'd come back, and people would listen to it later, not realizing that months passed between sessions.
It's just like back to back for them.
Yeah, they're like, literally an hour ago, this was explained to you. It's like, no, in real life, that was 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? an hour ago, it can be explained to me now, and I would not remember.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I spent my entire summer writing about all the new D&D 2024 rules, and there was a point in time this year
Mhm.
where I knew more about D&D 24 than anybody who didn't actually work on writing the project itself. And literally this morning, like an 11-year-old was able to go, no, I don't think the rule works that way about a new rule, and it's yeeted from my brain now because I'm not actively writing about it anymore.
And it's
Yeah.
the rule that mattered to that kid.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the thing of like because invite them to become the rules expert for their rules.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing I was thinking was if you've been playing Savage Worlds for 5 years, my assumption is that you have tried some other systems, but if you haven't, jump into masks, right? Jump into a really easy but lasers and feelings, right? Something.
I know the lasers. I don't understand the feeling.
Yeah, a lot of people
A lot of
don't.
people struggle with
Oh, see, now I get the feelings. I don't get
Yeah,
the lasers.
that's fair.
The point is,
No, I mean, I literally know Laser himself, so that's what I mean.
oh yeah, he's nice.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, invite your group into just a different scenario, a different rule set, right? A really simple rule set
Yeah.
to see, is that what they need? Do they need a simplified rule? Like, will that make everybody happier? Or will they go, oh man, I can't do this. Oh wait, the dice don't explode in this? Oh man. Like, then they might see some contrast.
Yeah.
That's the word I wanted.
It's literally was the first recent note I had was, well, have you tried playing simpler games?
Yeah.
I think this is such a valid point because the thing is, whatever juice they're getting out of the Benny's exploding dice, there's something that's clicking there.
Yeah.
And they might be able to find just as much mileage with something that is just already lasers and feelings. It's the one sheet
Yeah.
Yeah.
rule system.
And,
You know?
and I will say, like, I this sucks. In Demigods, you roll 2 dice, you add 1 number, and if you get doubles, something else happens. It's Benny's. It's a couple dice. It's like whatever. Yes, it's the game I made, but like.
Demigods, have you heard of it?
Okay. Okay.
Now
Look, I already was brave and said it. Okay. I deserve a parade. But the point is, it may be that I'm not saying don't throw out your Savage Worlds campaign, right? But give them a little contrast of this is Savage Worlds, this is something else, this is Masks, this is Mouse Ritter. Did you break something?
No.
No.
Nothing happened. It's fine.
They were choreographing the parade.
Okay.
Not our review game.
Not try something more complicated than Savage Worlds, chat, but something that's really, really simple and see, like, are we getting everything we want out of Apocalypse World or whatever? I don't know what Savage World setting. Did she say?
I don't
No, I
think
think so.
she said
Okay.
setting. She just said the system.
Okay. So it might be that, like Artem said, the juice is there, right? Like you might be able to get it and get those stories and have less frustration for yourself
Mhm.
when they already know to tell you what they want to do, but they don't know that to capitalize on a dice roll in Savage Worlds, you have to aim, you have to take an extended test, you have to do, like all of those things because I'm sorry, Savage Worlds fans, the dice suck. The dice system sucks.
I hate it.
The wild die is in there. They added it because they knew the math didn't make sense. That's why the wild die is in the system.
In this essay, I will.
So it's fine. I love Shadowrun. Okay, so you could come at me like I get it. We all like.
Yeah.
I also,
we like things that are bad for us
yeah,
sometimes.
yes. I have a whole diatribe about the things that you like. You can like something and differentiate whether it's good or bad.
Yes.
Right? You can like or dislike, and good or bad is not the same. I know the entire movie Speed by heart. It's not a good film,
Amazing.
but I love it. Okay? I love Shadowrun. You love Savage Worlds. That's great. The dice system is bad.
Yes.
So it might be that's where the disconnect is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you're saying too. Like,
Oh my God.
shocking. But I don't remember how you phrased it exactly, but I kind of, put something in my head of like maybe delegate a little bit. Like if they can't remember all the rules, maybe you can be like, hey, I have some frustrations regarding explaining the same rules over and over while I'm also trying to keep track of everything in the world. So with Artem, why don't you, become like the expert on XYZ rules, Riley, you're gonna be in charge of the grapple rules because one person.
What did I
needs
do to you?
One person needs
You
all.
know what you
yeah,
did.
You know.
I grappled too many times.
Etc. And
Oh, you've activated the grapple card.
yeah.
You grapple too much.
So that way you can
She
be
who
like,
grapples first grapples most.
yeah, because that way they can start to use each other as resources as well. Because a lot of times, especially people who haven't played RPGs with multiple groups and different GMs and stuff like that, they get this like linear question line between you and the GM, and they don't think when they're out of character to ask, like, Artem, do you remember how to do this? So that like the GM isn't carrying all the weight of all the
Is
rules.
this what it feels like when white guys say the thing you said but louder? You were busy with something early in the
Oh,
episode,
okay,
and this
sorry.
was a bunch of stuff that I said.
Oh, sorry.
And I love that it's
Well, no,
happening.
she was saying
No.
she was playing off of what you were saying.
Yeah,
earlier.
No,
She
I
was
know.
reiterating.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I'm also teasing, but like,
Okay.
it was just funny.
Okay. My yeah, we had a technical thing. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, no, it's a great
Totally
idea. I sort of picked up on you saying that because like in my head I was like, Jason said
It's
something
not
about this.
exactly
Oh,
what
I,
I
thought,
said.
I
was
literally
just,
thought you were reiterating it. Like,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I
To
was just making a
emphasize the
joke.
point made
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
Demigod's writer.
Yeah.
Jason.
Sometimes I have to like multitask, and sometimes I'm great at it, and sometimes I'm not. So anyway.
I know I'm bad at multitasking. So
Look, we were looking up grapple rules.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Jason.
Hoisted by their own grapple.
Oh my gosh. Grappled by our own petards.
So
Yeah.
anyway, cool. Let's try mailbag number 2 then. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
Susan.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Please write in again. Who would like to read this one?
I can read it.
I just want to reiterate, Susan, I really want to know what happens with your group. Please write in again if you try something.
Oh, I
and
can tell you
like-
what happens is they're not going to learn the rules. That's
No.
what's going to happen with
No,
my
they're not.
group.
But I want to know how
Yeah.
it goes when they continue to not learn the rules. Like, I want to know more
I wanna know
about
more.
this group.
Okay, mailbag number 2. Oh, sweet, okay. Hello, Happy Jacks. This is Mike from Ithaca, New York, with a follow-up comment, with some follow-up comments to some things that came up in season 33, episode 13. Feel free to chop up this message and use pieces as you see fit. Oh, thank you for your sacrifice. Regarding Clara's desire to play a game where the PCs are kids who had been brought to a magical fantasy world, then return to the real world and have to deal with the fantastical things they'd once experienced. 2 games I know of that sort of do that are the Fate World of Adventure. Nest tells pretty much exactly that story, except that is the Fate World of Adventure Nest?
Yes.
Okay. 2 games I know that sort of do that are the Fate World of Adventure Nest.
When I copy and pasted it, it lost the italicized.
Got it.
Sorry.
Fate World of Adventure Nest tells pretty much exactly that story, except that you're now adults in the real world, but are feeling the pull that the fantasy world wants you to return.
Oh.
The other is the Die, the RPG, based on the graphic novel series of a group of tabletop RPGers who got pulled into the world of their campaign and then returned to the real world.
Now, Die, what is that?
I still don't know.
Jason's in an actual play of it on our channel on
And I'm
Friday.
having a great time. I do know most of the rules
Good.
because they're simple, but the story is so wild. I don't even know how to describe.
It's
the
like
game.
it's like a RPG Jumanji sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a-
But that one you actually come back there, but you go back to at least. I haven't played the game. I've only read the graphic novel.
Same.
But the graphic novel, they go back to the
You-
graphic novel is set in the fantasy
The
world.
graphic novel is bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a mashup of Jumanji and Narnia, where it's
Yeah,
like,
or-
or like even like the Magicians with Fillory, where like you go back and like you have
Yeah.
to deal with
Yes.
repercussions of what
Well-
happened when you were.
Well, yeah. That's even better because we played this game as teenagers, grew up, became dysfunctional adults, and then we get together to play one more time and get sucked into the world.
Yeah.
Right?
That's how the game book is too.
And we're dealing with the consequences of shitty stuff we did as teenagers in just playing a game, being horrible, and not thinking of it as having real world consequences
Yes.
with anyone. And then we're getting sucked in as adults, having to now fix the world that teenage us broke.
Yeah, that's how the book
Okay,
is too.
okay.
Yes.
Sweet. This is so
Yeah,
cool.
it's very interesting. Just on an aside, and before you jump into the second part of the email, it is the weirdest game as like the channel manager
Oh, yeah.
to like randomly tune
This
into.
was funny.
Because like I tune in and I think it was Sam was talking to the GM Lloyd, but they were in character And I didn't realize this because I was like in and out. It was like a day we had like parent conferences, so I didn't have students that day. So I was popping in and out. And Sam was telling Lloyd like all the stuff they were doing wrong as the GM.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
Really, Sam's character was telling Francis.
yes.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize at first though, because I tuned in and it's just like Sam like being super serious with like I feel like you're not taking my thing seriously. I feel
Yeah.
like there's nowhere to go with these quests. And I was just like, why is this happening on air?
Oh no, this
What
is
is
melting down.
What do I do? How do I stop this on my cell phone right now in the middle of my
Yeah,
meeting?
and
Oh my
also
God.
like
You're
Sam
like
DeLevis.
literal nightmare.
Sam DeLevis being a dick to someone live on like what is that? What is the world is upside down?
And what's wrong with Lloyd? Like Lloyd's great at this stuff.
Yeah.
What is happening? So and then like I just sat there like staring in horror at my phone, and then like they like Lloyd then like starts to narrate something. I was like, oh, they're in character. This is part of the game. This is very meta. Okay, I'm gonna continue watching with understanding now. Excellent.
Yeah, I also got a side message from Kimmy at one point as I was producing
What
this.
is
I'm like,
happening?
is everyone okay? Is this in character? Yep. We're
Kimmy,
good.
you are the exact person that in the urban legend about War of the Worlds, you would have turned the radio
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, the Martians are attacking!"
Yeah.
Before we move on, well, first of all, that's Mr. Show sketch is called The Audition. That's like that. Where the
Oh
audition
my
is,
God,
is David Cross.
yes.
He's like talking to the people in the room.
May I use this
But
chair?
yeah, you can go ahead and use it.
No, I already started them.
No, it's part of the yeah. It's a and then like oh, I'm sorry. No, that's also part of it. Like but what I
It's
was
a
saying,
very good play.
while we're on this topic of games to recommend for this, because the next section doesn't kind of do that as much.
Yeah.
I think the Changeling the Lost game that was Onyx Path, that was like New World Darkness,
Yeah.
would really work really well for this system because the premise of Changeling the Lost is like, because Changeling and Dreaming is obviously a fun Changeling game as well, but Changeling and Lost is specifically
Yeah.
you were kidnapped, taken to a fantasy realm
Very
of
dark.
the Feywild, and now you've been brought back to the real world, and like you had been replaced while you were gone by a changeling,
Yeah.
and now they're gone, and now you're back in your life, but you don't quite fit into your life because you've been changed by this fantasy world you lived in. So I think that's almost exactly what it sounds like the kind of game Clara was talking about. So I could just tell her directly because we are friends, and I can do that, but instead I'm going to do it in this form and see if it ever gets to her.
I'll just add another recommendation too that I played recently, a PBTA called Under Hollow Hills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, by Megan Vincent Baker.
McGay and Vincent. Baker.
McGay and Vincent Baker. Which is you play very obscure fey creatures who all get together and travel around and put on circus performances.
That sounds amazing.
So you like put on a big top.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
And so every time you
Amazing.
travel to a new
Yeah.
town,
I want to play this
it's a
so
different
badly now.
season. And so you play all these different, like I played a character that was made out of discarded wine bottles. So it was like a construct of glass bottles. Somebody played a horse.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, can we change the title of the episode? We're doing something else now.
Yeah.
but one of the characters you can play is like a child that wandered into the Fey wild and or whatever, just the fairy realm and never left. And then another one
And molasses.
and then another one character you can play is someone who's pretending to be part of the fairy realm, but is actually just a human. So there's like these two human surrogates that sort of exist there.
Down the
So there's
road.
somebody's just like
I'm a
obviously
witch.
human, and somebody else is like, no, I'm a gargoyle. Ooh, they're my wings. But it's a really freaky game with a lot of cool storytelling potential. But there's a really interesting way to play it where you can have all of your weird circus performers leave the fairy tale world and come into the real world, and then what does that do? And obviously you can like find ways for humans to like pop in and pop out, and if it's a expanding campaign, obviously you could accidentally maybe hijack some humans with you, and then they get trapped and they get changed forever. And so
I love the idea of a
Very neat.
character who was at like a Ren fair and was cosplaying and then like stumbled into this group
yes,
and did not realize until way too late that it wasn't a bunch of other people cosplaying.
Yeah,
and then
my
they like
God.
finally find out like that would be like multiple sessions in before
Yeah.
they realize that they're actually part of a magical fantasy story. And
Oh, I love your Pumpkin King
How do you make
costume. Oh my
that?
God, you're
Yeah.
peeling your own skin right now. That's
Wow.
so
This is
weird.
such a best
cool
LARP
organic.
ever.
What did you use for that? Is it fondant?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So that's a really fun one.
Yeah.
Under Hollow Hills.
Yeah.
Mm, I
It's
wanna
very
play
good.
that.
Yeah.
Ever since I watched Station 11, I've wanted to do
Oh.
a role-playing game that is about a group of traveling performers in sort of a bleak world.
Yeah,
Because that
Station
Station 11,
11.
that was it the Wandering Symphony?
Beautiful.
Oh, so good.
Mm.
Sorry,
Awesome.
now back
No,
to the
no,
question.
it's good.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So-
Okay, so that's the first part of the email. Fantastic. Great job, everybody. We're doing so
Well
good.
done, well
All
done.
right. Second part of the email. responding to Ken from Canada, who asked about how many players was too many players. This is a great topic. One is. In my experience, that entirely depends on the game system. Back in the early days of D&D, when old school role-playing was just role-playing, that is the late 1970s, early mid-80s, it was not uncommon to run a table with 6, 8, 10, or even 12 players.
Oof.
Only even numbers, I'll note, okay?
Yeah.
Very important. Or else the apocalypse comes. The game was set up for that. Gary Gygax himself wrote a section of the 1979 AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide with guidance on how to run a table with that many players. While I wouldn't necessarily
As long
recommend...
as there's no women, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Goodness
That's my
gracious.
one.
very
That's my
specifically.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily recommend following that advice today. Most modern OSR games like Into the Odd or Old School Essentials can handle up to 8 players without too much difficulty. Ken said he's running Savage Worlds, which I'm not super familiar with, and I'm not sure if it's workable with 6 players.
Do you play at Susan's table?
I would
Uh-oh.
recommend learning the rules if
Yeah.
you do.
I will say
That
that
was
many contemporary narrative-focused games really start to
It was on
break
two.
down if you have more than 5 players. For games in the PBTA or Forged in the Dark or rooted in trophy families, 3 to 4 players is the sweet spot. I like scheduling for 4 players. That way, if one player can't make it, you still have enough to run the game. And did I hear correctly that he was running 2 groups of 6 players each? If that's the case, I'd strongly recommend, if your schedule allows it, that you reshuffle the groups and instead you run 3 groups of 4 players each. Wow, okay, really in-depth. Thank you, Mike from Ithaca, New York.
Yeah.
Wow.
This might be
very
less of a
thoughtful.
commentary on Mike's letter and more your delivery of it, but you got very Ned Flanders in the middle of that. When it's like, and a glass of water for Duncan.
And 4 players each, and Oakley Dakley. Have a great day.
One player can't make it. You got enough to run the game.
Well,
You got one to sacrifice if you need to. It's fine.
Yeah, more than 5 is my limit.
yeah.
Like I can run 6, but don't want to. Right? 5 I think is perfect because then if someone's missing, we still have 4 players.
Yeah.
Right.
3 is a very intimate, specific situation that I plan for differently
Mm-hmm.
than 4 players or 5 players.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but that's what happens in my head.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
cannot, I know people say that, and I see people when you go to, like some of these big conventions, you go to, whatever, and there's especially vampire and stuff, there's 12 people at a table. And I get, people are trying to max out their volunteer GMing hours so that they can run fewer games and then have a free con badge or whatever. And this is only at big cons, like Gen Con generally is where this is very notorious with 12 players. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine even old school games. I haven't played, but I've looked at and I have copies of these old games. I can't imagine that. Maybe it can handle it the way that if I built you see those science projects by high schoolers
Oh, yeah.
about okay, you have a bunch of solo cups, make a bridge. Yes, technically that bridge might be able to hold a certain number of kids who stand on top of it or whatever, but I feel like that's not good.
Not best practice.
Yes, for them to do that at break to see which team holds the most.
You have technically accomplished the task.
Yeah.
But was it good?
Yeah, was it good? Will this actually function as a bridge? No, it will not.
Yeah.
I do that that's part of what I do for a living, and I want to say that it's not yes, we're not making an actual functional bridge, but it's teaching kids about structural dynamics and structural engineering, and it's part
Yeah.
of STEAM. And
It's very important.
okay.
But as a functional bridge,
Sure.
not functional.
But I also okay, that person is willing to run for 12. But when I see a table that has a cap over 6,
Uh-huh.
right? I don't sign up for that table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not going to have fun. The spotlight isn't going to go evenly. And let's say it did go evenly over the course of 4 hours, I get 8 minutes. That's not accurate. But you know what I mean? I get 1/12 of an hour.
Yeah.
Is my time.
And also, I think a buddy of mine pointed this out a long time ago that in the original D&D rules or something, there was some insane thing that was this game can be run with 4 to 99 people. There was some concession about you could have an absolute gymnasium filled with people playing this at the same time, which is wild, kind of really exciting to think about, also kind of dreadful and intense. But I think to your point, Jason, I think it's can you shift the spotlight enough that people are all fulfilled
Yeah.
by the experience?
Right.
To me, it seems like dishonest. Like, yes, technically, maybe everyone could roll and participate and technically play, but like, to what extent are they actually playing the game? Like,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, if you're. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I could technically run D&D for a gymnasium. Okay, everybody, like, roll, and then like put in Discord what your
Roll
damage
for
was.
initiative.
Yeah, like whatever it is. like- yeah,
There's flags going
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
We're rolling for initiative now.
yeah, third body, whatever it's called, that
Yeah.
problem, like version of D&D with a bazillion people. But like, they're not playing D&D. It's not the
Right.
same experience. Like, I don't know. That just seems very frustratingly and like dishonest.
I mean, there's also like how people engage with this game. Like I feel like some people they don't want to have an intimate game. They don't want
Right.
to have. They don't want to make eye contact. They
Right.
want to be in their sheet. They want to say what they're going to do only when they're asked. And like for them, playing in a group of 6 people is actually it's very fulfilling. That
Yeah.
they don't get the spotlight. They just want it sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
And but again, what is your table, right? What's the fun thing for the table? Because I've definitely played in games where it was like some people bailed and it was just like me and 2 other players, and then we had a great time. But it's a totally different flow,
Right.
right? Like the spotlight is almost like malleable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and, like, so I now frequently, I tried it out of spite. I went to Adventurers League at our local con, right? I was like, I'm gonna hate this, and I'll prove it.
Oh,
And I
but-
went and had a fucking great time, right? But it is not people playing roles. They just want to roll dice
Yeah.
for the most part, right? There are some odd bods sometimes you run into and have a good time.
I
And
feel like
we're-
our table had a good time. doing
Yes,
that, yeah.
we absolutely did, but we also kind of knew each other and
Yeah.
whatever. When I've sat down with all strangers, it has been a little bit of like, my character's this and my character's optimized like that. Like, okay, roll to take your turn, right? Like, that was the extent of what we were doing. Nobody was characterizing. No one was, having a soliloquy moment like that. And there were only 5 or 6 people playing. It was still like a reasonable number that you could have some pretend time.
Mhm.
But the people who were sitting down to play that wanted a board game,
Yeah.
right? They wanted a big elaborate board game. And I think if you're playing with 12 people, you inevitably get a big elaborate board game, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think you don't get the deep level of characterization that I think a lot of us look for. And like when I say maximum 5 people at my table, that's because I want to bop the spotlight around. I want to get into everybody's backstory. I want to get into their feelings. I want to know what, how they're affected by what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
because that's a story I care about.
Yeah.
right?
And I'll say, even from the angle of it being like a board game, I think that one of the worst experiences I ever had at a table was playing D&D at a comic shop, and there were I think 10 to 12 of us at the table, and it was miserable because we got into a big combat, and even as somebody who likes the rolling dice and combat parts of D&D, I think we played for 2 hours. I got one turn, I got to do something, and then my character got paralyzed, and then it took 45 minutes for my turn to come around again,
Mhm.
and at no point in that 45 minutes did I get mobilized again. So
you
I
had to roll
got
the
my
save
I
versus-
rolled my save. I failed my save.
Oh,
So
God.
45 minutes later, I didn't get to do anything again. So I was like, cool, I'm so glad that I played in this game where I didn't get to, even if I did just want to sit and roll dice and fight, I had to sit there and wait for everybody else to play their complicated combat turns.
Yeah.
It's even if on my turns I had gotten to do a thing, it might have been cool, I got to do one area of attack. I was a cleric, so I would have had a cool area of attack magic spell, but still it would have happened, and then 45 minutes later I would have to go again. That's not fun.
No.
That was so miserable, boring.
Yeah.
And people at the table were even breaking off and kind of running their own little things on the side, which was frustrating. It's but we're stuck in turn order, but you're doing weird things where you're stealing all the loot or whatever.
Yeah.
So obviously it couldn't be
Or
controlled.
playing Magic the Gathering.
Yeah,
Oh.
I've
I've seen that at a table.
been running D&D a lot for a group of kids lately, and last week, because of the way signups worked and someone was testing it out, there was going to be 8 kids at my table, and then luckily for me, another table had some no-shows. So I was like, you and you're over there now. And they went to the other table and played there. Especially because I had 2 players who were brand new. And I was like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to give these kids a good experience and have them learn the game at all if I'm running 8 people. Like, there wasn't even a seat for me at the table at the time. I was going to have to stand around holding my laptop and walking around when they were playing it. So I was like, no, this can't be. So I feel like even when you're not worrying about super deep story stuff and you're just worrying about mechanics, when you have too many players at a table with a game that's system complicated, it's not fun for anybody there.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And the first game we ever did, and the game that kind of spawned Happy Jacks, so it was like right when 4E was released, we started a 4E game. So there was like 5 of us to start, and
MMO the RPG.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like slowly but surely, because Stu, I don't know, like someone wouldn't show up, so he'd feel like he needed to invite someone else to the table to make sure that there was someone there.
Sure.
So eventually we ended up having, I think, 10 people in the game. It was a lot. And most of the time, not everybody showed up, so it kind of worked out. But then there were some times where we would have like 8 or 9. And then there were some times where we had everyone show up. And so we had this core group of people who were big role players. It was me, it was Tappy, it was Stork, Bruce. Like, so it was all these people who were very into character, very into combat, all these things that were like deep story all the time. So Stu just started avoiding combat as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like, we're just gonna play, and then like we'd have a combat every couple of sessions, and it would just be the entire session.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how 4E worked. But it was really hard because even though we were trying to make room for people, because we were all like trained improv people and all these things, like we'd have other people at the table who were quieter, and we'd like throw the spotlight at them, and all of us would like sit, okay, and they'd be like, I do this, and I'd be like, okay.
Okay.
Or like pulling story out of them with like both hands, like all of us together trying to get them. And most of the time they were perfectly happy just to like let us do all our big talking and be there and have their character be part of the story, even though they weren't like super engaging. Not super engaging, but like engaging as a character. So it was just,
Even though they were boring as fuck.
no, they were wonderful.
No.
And they're still friends of mine.
I'm kidding.
But I think they would also like acknowledge that about their play style. So it was a very interesting kind of jump in and first experience with having that big of a play group and trying to find that balance. And yeah, I don't know. Even with everybody willing and everyone really cognizant of it at the table, it still ended up so lopsided and so hard. And we ended up deciding that we'd move to a different system, and Stu decided to go with Heroes.
Yeah, much simpler.
I mean, learning the rules wasn't the problem. I don't know if he was trying to, maybe he's trying to scare people away.
Yeah, that's effective.
Or wait, maybe it was GURPS. It must have been GURPS. It was Stu. It must have been GURPS. But I feel like it was Heroes.
Or Traveler.
It was not Traveler, because we were doing like fantasy.
Oh, okay. Because I know he loves Traveler.
He does love Traveler.
What's everybody's preferred size of group?
5.
5?
4 to 5.
Including you?
4 to 5, and plus me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think
I
I've been gravitating towards 4.
Yeah.
Like me and then 4 players. Like the Mouse Raider actual play.
Yeah.
This is great.
Perfect.
I was actually trying to think of why I like it, because there is something like there was in our previous recent session there was a moment where Terry's and Bill's character had to do something because something happened to Bill's character, and they were discovering this piece of information about a snake. I don't want to give anything away to anybody who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, okay.
But in the
still on episode 0.
meantime,
Now I know
Joey's
the snake.
character was exploring a different part of town. Kai's character was exploring yet another part of town, and they were finding out other bits of information that all relate to the snake. So it's like it really felt very cinematic because you could jump around, and they were all getting pieces of information. So as players, they were getting this information.
Yeah.
And then it was really fun to be able to like, oh, you can do this kind of thing where people kind of explore a lot.
Yeah.
Reconvene, and it's able to kind of truck along.
And then the mice were texting each other updates. Of
Yeah.
what they were planning. Yeah.
Pagers, come on.
Yes.
I will say that there's something about big groups. There's it's something in the Mothership game, the way they do turns that I've been sort of embracing for a lot of stuff, and I think this is how we did it for Mouse Raider for the one shot that I did Strategicon, where you just go around and you ask everybody what they're going to do, and you resolve everybody as a group.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of does
That's
this
what
thing.
Wild Talents does so
That's what I
well.
love, yeah.
Which
It's-
is why I
it's really
insisted
fun.
on playing Wild Talents.
Yeah, because it kind of eliminates that metagaming thing that kind of can slow turns down.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of gets to sort of live the kind of in the moment.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows what's going to happen.
And,
Yeah.
and the wild thing there is you can do that in any. You can do that in
can do it
D&D.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
You can say, okay, here's the turn order. We're gonna figure that out, but just hide that for a second. What does everyone want to do?
Yeah.
Right? And then we're gonna figure out the order that it happens in.
Yeah.
Like,
The Doctor Who bespoke RPG that the Vortex system that is made by Cubicle 7, what they do is based on Doctor Who thematics. You declare: are you talking? Are you doing? Are you moving? Or are you fighting?
That's
And
cool.
if you, it might be talkers, movers, doers, fighters, but regardless, talkers always go first because it's Doctor Who, and fighters always go last because it's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And it's like that's like this is not a game based around violence, but there is violence. There are violent things that happen in Doctor Who, but like the Doctor always tries to avoid violence. So it's like the game wants you to try to use diplomacy or negotiation first, or protect, or do that, and then if you can't do it, then you fight. But that's the order every time.
I love
That's
that.
so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm.
All right.
shall we move on to
Mailbag. Yes.
Okay.
Number 3
Shall
from
I?
the archive. Yeah. go
Okay.
for it.
from way back in 2020? Hey, Jackers. Costa here from Adelaide to tell you of a horror story with a few red flags and lesson to be learned. We will get to some, this is not in the thing, we'll have some content warnings as we go, just be aware. Fair safety disclaimer that this tale, so there,
Like, this isn't part of this, except for the very next line is part of it.
yeah, sorry, I thought it was mentioned later in the email.
It is. Yeah.
The disclaimer, this tale mentions suicidal thoughts of a character.
In
Okay?
roleplay.
Yeah, the role, like in character, not the player. So that feels like an important distinction. I will mention just before the scene occurs in case any listeners wish to not listen to that part of the email. Very thoughtful. Thank you, Costa.
Yeah.
Sorry in advance for the massive length. Sorry. I assume that's how I was supposed to read that.
I'm sure.
So for the setup to this story.
God.
This coming from the demigod's writer.
Oh my
himself.
God!
It's very long.
This might be the new record. It goes to a 4th page.
The massive length.
It's only
was
one
mentioned.
line. Oh my God! Oh my God!
We got the warning about the
You
length.
got,
Yep.
you got this.
Okay.
You have our consent. Go.
We got to get through it.
All the way out of through.
I'm running a Call of Cthulhu / D&D 3.5 mashup game for some of my regular players. Don't comment. The idea of the
We
campaign
don't have time.
was to bring sanity mechanics to D&D and have a harsher setting for the players to muck about in where magic was rare, healing was near non-existent, and the threat of going insane was more scary than PC death. Standard Call of Cthulhu. Honestly, yeah, I feel like we didn't need the D&D part of it. Sorry, I'm commenting. God damn it. I ask all the players to roll 3d6 down the line. That's rolling for your attributes. You know. Many of the players are scared they will get low rolls and not be as effective at all the things. The whole exercise I wanted to show them was that you don't need 18s in everything to enjoy the game. They all caught on pretty quick to the idea and later told me this was a campaign they would never forget for its gritty, epic moments of high-stakes tension. We roll 3 lines, and they choose which one sounds the most interesting to play. Most of the players had 1 or 2 good stats, with 3 being below average. Some in the very low category, and then there was this guy. Let's call him Peter.
Peter.
Because that was
Peter.
Fucking Peter.
his Beta.
Peter rolls for stats and gets nothing lower than a 13 with 2 18s. Naturally, he puts the 18s into strength and constitution. When I ask him to bring down some of those numbers so that he doesn't feel out of place with the other players or the campaign's theme, he objected, but I never roll this well. I'm going to keep them. I have so much to say about rolling for stats. Okay. Red flag number 1, he only rolled 1 stat line and said he would stick with it. While all the others had HP between 3 to 7 at best, he was here at 14 on level 1, which further increased to 28 and beyond after level 1 due to some lucky rolls, while no one else cracked double digits until level 3. I thought to just keep the game moving forward and make sure everyone was enjoying themselves in the story we all crafted together. I asked the players to find some character art inspiration for the concept they have after session 1. Peter says that his character is one of the characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
Oh boy, okay.
Anime Fight Man show about the wackiness of having a magical entity that fights battle for you. That is the simplest way I could put it. Yeah, I mean,
That is
yeah.
really watering it down.
I know the neckbeards are going to be screaming at me, but it's enough for you to get the point of the story. Google if you want to know. This is not my editorialization. This is
In the email.
the words of Costa.
This is part of the 4 pages.
Yeah. Red flag number 2. He didn't say his character was like this character from JoJo. He said this character was this character from JoJo. That's worth a couple red flags all in one.
Sure.
I'll skip some of the fluff. Thank you. The party find themselves on the run and harboring away on a boat from one township to the next. Between sessions, I'm talking to the PCs about these cool NPC ideas I have for them to interact with and learn cool abilities off of. Party loves the idea of these mentor characters, all except Peter. Peter starts going on that I'm only introducing this NPC to kill this PC, and that I'm totally just trying to kill him off. I tell him this is not the case, very clearly, but he does not listen. Red flag number 3. If the GM tells you he isn't trying to kill your PC, they're probably not trying to kill your PC. He had a grown-up conversation with Peter and said, that's not what I'm doing here. We're doing something else. Go with me here.
And then I killed his PC.
Deserved it. Next session starts. Peter's JoJo character has, I think we can just say JoJo, has a fist fight with the ship's half-giant man Franz. Okay, I thought he was having a fist fight with the ship. And
I mean, I wouldn't put it past Peter after this story.
No.
look, Clara
Stop talking to me.
That's Franz.
stabbed a spaceship with a knife. Okay, so that's where we are on Happy Jacks. The captain of the ship calls for
Did the
a
ship ask for
spar. I think so. Between the two, and the party is excited to see who will win. As I mentioned before, this is a game world where magic is super rare. Healing is not something that happens beyond natural sources. If you lose an eye, then you better find an eye patch. Okay, so trigger warning regarding the self-harm component in the email. Thank you again for being thoughtful about that, Costa, and anyone who writes in. This is me editorializing.
Making
Thank you.
character self-harm.
Yes, and it is character self-harm. Peter is fighting as he does, ambidextrous style, as that's what the JoJo character does. Franz takes a huge swing and crits. I refer to my crit table and describe the following. The force of Franz's blow contacts your wrist and you hear something crack. Your wrist is broken. The whole party is amazed and excited about this. They see the arc of the character flash before their eyes, needing to learn to fight one-handed or feign his fighting prowess under the guise of one working hand. The possibilities were amazing. I asked Peter what he wants to do. He responded with, I walk off the side of the ship and commit suicide. Everyone, including myself, is stunned and shocked by this. Of all the answers he could have given, this was not what we were expecting. We ask him why. He says that his character wouldn't want to live if he couldn't fight two-handed. There's so much. That's just a side real quick. I also want to add the amount of ableism involved with this is harmful and horrible. And we'll finish the.
That's why it's a terrible red flag in a horror story.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want people like this at your table.
And we'll talk about how to deal with the situation. But red flag number 4, Peter was so committed to his character being one way that he refused to have the game change that idea in his head at all. Yeah.
Well, that's not role-playing, Peter.
I end up having to retcon that one of the PCs has this one-time fix ability he can use on Peter's PC's wrist to fix it, but it knocks out his PC for 2 days of bed rest and nearly damages him the same way. The session eventually deflates, and we all go about our ways trying not to discuss it further, but all of us individually check in on Peter to see if he's okay. Campaign continues until eventually Peter feels his character is too strong against the other PCs and doesn't fit the campaign's theme.
Oh, God.
Oh, if only that had been suggested. Oh, okay. Lesson to be learned from this. Negatives should be used to evolve the RP. If you have a flaw, playing it out can lead to some amazing role-playing moments. Wanting to be perfect all the time and locking down super hard on a character concept that has no flexibility to grow is doing a disservice to the medium of RPGs. But hey, that's just my opinion. It's okay to be right. Yeah. Would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Costa from Adelaide. P.S. Sorry about restarting the flame war of D&D classes versus non-class systems a while back at the start of the season. Oh, okay, a previous email. After reading that email, I kind of had an anxiety breakdown because my email was not well written and sort of messed up the point I was going for. To hear all the anger it produced, only being able to listen and not elaborate my points was hard. Nearly made me stop listening to the show. Oh my gosh, okay. Well, that's not going to happen if you write in, folks. I promise. It was a different time.
All the way back at the start of this season.
Well, I mean, from 2020. So.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad I wasn't here for this
Yeah,
conversation.
why don't you finish reading? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I am back and wanting to both listen and write in some more to the show. And also, Costa, if you're still listening, would love to hear like an update on this. Of what every time we get to these archives, I'm always like, but what about now? Like, what's happening? PPS drink
Huzzah.
and footnote for Stu. Really sorry if this email is too long.
It's so long, Stu stopped running the show.
Stu doesn't get a vote.
That's how long it's been.
Yeah.
Stu's fine. Everybody,
He's definitely
Thank
not
you.
buried underneath the state.
So
Thank you,
okay.
Costa from Adelaide.
Yes. So I feel like we have to like decide. Like, this feels like troll behavior. This feels like this person, like not knowing their prior relationship to the other people in this group. That would obviously change my mind.
I regret to
Like-
inform you that I've had similar
I have to.
experiences.
Right. No, I know.
Mine
But,
are mostly with kids, but still.
well, yeah, that's a little different. Like, but
I've
it-
had it with adults too.
Yeah, but like, I know, but like time after time, like actually having this world and then being like the JoJo's thing, like that's the thing that really made me like, wait a minute, you're not actually just inspired, but you are from this anime and you're trying to cram it into this D&D campaign.
Yeah, I wrote say no on the sheet.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
As a DM, like I get this is probably a newer DM or GM at the time,
Mhm.
or someone who was trying out a new thing for the first time based on what was being described here. But yeah, that's a say no situation. No, you
Yeah.
can't do that. Sorry, that's not this game.
Yeah. And it's also like, I don't necessarily want to say like, oh, GM, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. But there are like you identified a bunch of red flags, right? That's a good, and you can bring those up as talking points, and I would encourage you to do so. And the one thing I would really discourage new GMs from doing is random stats. I know a lot of people like doing it, and unless it's part of like how Traveler does their career system, that's balanced to accommodate really different skill levels. Like
Yeah.
it all fits together. The way Traveler has some guardrails on it that get everybody into an approximate same position, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the problem, again, this is entirely my opinion, but when you roll random stats, they can end up wild. And why did you roll 3 times down the line? Because it was going to be wild, right? And it's going to end up feeling unfair or unbalanced or weird. And I will say, one of the worst characters I ever made was like this, where I had 18, 18, 17, 13, 10, 10, I think.
Whoa.
13, 11, 10, something like that, right? I had 3 very high stats and 3 okay stats. And I hated that character. I had a terrible time playing it because the challenge wasn't there and I just didn't like it. And I also don't like the risk of rolling garbage stats because in D&D, it really sucks to not feel like you can do your job. And when it's randomized like that, that's what's going to happen. The basic array gives you this, or point by if you say you have to have a -1, but like the basic array gives you a -1 stat. It gives you a +2 or +3 stat depending on what you do. And that's good. That's character stuff. There's room for development. Here's the thing you're good at. Here's the thing you're bad at. As a D&D, when I'm running D&D, I insist that everybody starts with a -1 stat somewhere, right? And that gives you that feeling of balance. But when you're rolling, it is unfair based on what everybody rolled, right? Like you can have that effect without randomizing it. And that's like the extreme randomization, in my opinion. And it can set up this feeling of, well, I didn't decide what these stats are. This character was foisted onto me, right? And now I have to decide what to do with it.
Yeah. To me, like I feel like
There's
that's
appeal to that. but-
yeah, like not super consequential to like the full email. Like this person, like it's the first red flag because they had 0.
Oh, yeah. That's my
yeah.
tangent opinion
Yeah.
of about rolling stats.
Yeah, they're
I-
inflexibility and they're like
That's wild.
unwillingness to try and be balanced. Like, I get, like, it would suck to have really great rolls and be like, hey, give them up. So I could see why there'd be a conversation there.
Yeah, my point, I think every other red flag in this email, I'm totally on the side of the email writer, even though there are a lot of them and it's long. But I'm overall on the side of this wordy person. I'm very wordy. It's fun. We have fun here. I'm overall on their side, but I think I'm with Jason on this one. That yes, this is a red flag, inflexibility, but I also think it's a red flag on the part of the GM here because you obviously wanted a specific type of game here, and yet you used a randomizer for. I love random rolls. I love playing games where everyone has a random roll, but everyone who goes into it has the buy-in of this could be great or this could be terrible. And I think that like in this case, it's like you obviously didn't want someone to have the chance to roll with really high stats, but you also put them in a situation where that was possible. And so, like, I would also be a little frustrated if everybody said, you know, we're gonna roll random, and I roll random, and I had these great rolls, and then I'm being told like, oh, we actually have to penalize you for it.
Yeah, I'm being asked not to use. Like I followed the rules. I did the thing that you set up. Even if I'm not as horrible as Peter. Oh, horrible Peter.
Yeah.
Was from a that's that whole campaign thing with Dave.
Because like this, it's like I wanted people to know that like rolling below, you don't need 18 or anything to enjoy the game. Well, like to your point, if you play standard array, you almost never even have a 18. You might have one only if you get boost in that particular stat.
Yeah.
But like the highest you're gonna get, you start with 15 plus whatever. So it's like yeah. I mean, if you didn't want people to have high rolls, I mean high stats, don't use a system that allows for high stats. So that is a thing where I could see the frustration on the player's part, and if that had been the only red flag in this email, I would have been like, actually, that's kind of on you.
Yeah, that's 1%. 1% of this problem is those random rolls.
Yeah. But then, when you get to the next, you get to the next part and everything else, there's obviously a lot of other problems here.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, to me, and I've been this GM before. I've probably been not this bad with this player before, but I've been a player who's been stubborn about like my character and how I built them and how I wanted to play them and stuff like that. But like, yes, absolutely, like your character should be built up to the game that you're playing in. To take a real quick sidebar to what you're saying earlier about random rolls, I do think that part of the appeal of random rolling is that you get your stats and you look at them, and then you look at your stats, you go, oh, I think I can see where this player comes from, and that's what's fun about it for me. It's like it is the idea of like what can you do with what you're given, and it's like having a prompt for a story, and like it can be inspiring and creative in that way. I
would be okay with randomly assigning the standard array.
I'm gonna lasso you both and pull you back into the topic of the email.
I would say, so back to my original point. Yeah. That's the one flag that I do think does speak to possibly a greater issue with the setup of this game.
Yes.
But then overall, like every single one of these things is a point where I think that the DM, and I think we've all been in a position where we have players who have steamrolled us, so I'm not trying to like victim blame this DM here, but I do think a lot of these things are moments where a away from the table conversation needed to happen with Peter, and like I'm sad for this game that it went this way, and I feel bad for these players that it went this way. I do think that Peter should not have been at this table still playing this character by the time this situation happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This reminds me of like right now my daughter like trying to get my husband to say no.
Yeah.
My husband is amazing and he's a great dad, and he's a pushover when she like starts like her little lip quivery thing, like he tries to sit and have a conversation, and no matter what, she talks him into whatever. Like eventually, it's amazing. Yeah, she's so good. But like, there are points where you're just like, no, you can't have the Christmas tree be the colors you want all the time. I'm sorry. I'm talking to Peter now. Peter, you can't be from JoJo. You can't. Inspired by maybe. It's like, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. Like you can say no to players.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're inviting them into the theme that you want to set, right? It's a low magic, low healing. Like here's what I want to do. I need your character. Help me fit your character into that paradigm. What can we do?
And also, I think you even started the response to this email earlier. You're like, this sounds a little bit like troll behavior. And I kind of like, I echo that along with this conversation that like, all right, player buy-in. Like that whole conversation that happens at the beginning. Here's what the game's about. Here's what's going to happen in this game. Like, are you into this? Are you super duper into this? And if the player's like, I would be really into it if I could be JoJo, you're like, sorry, this isn't
Yeah.
the game. You know,
This isn't the
So,
JoJo game.
obviously, like, hindsight is whatever. What the saying is, but the thing is for Costa, like, I feel like that's something that like you can then have, you can revisit that and say, hey, just want to kind of chat about. And it's hard to have advocacy as like a GM in that situation where you're like, oh, this is going off the rails. It's hard to sort of say pause and say, hey, listen, I think this is not quite the vibe that I was starting off, and I just want to, before we go too far, I don't want us to skew too much and to make this seem like this is the game we're playing because I want something else. To Kimi, to what you were kind of saying, that I was echoing the thought that like I do think that Peter, maybe needs a special group or a hug.
Yeah.
Or Peter needs some kind of attention, but clearly Peter was thriving this idea of being, hey, everybody's doing this thing, and I'm going to be the odd person out. You know, everybody's being nice. I'm going to come in this room and fart and leave. You know, like I think there was like an element. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's an element of just like everyone's doing one thing, and I'm going to try to sabotage it a little bit, and that's going to be the fun thing for me.
And to be a spoiler, you know, like that's one thing, but to get to the point where like I want to ask Peter, like, so your character broke his wrist, didn't even cut his hand off, right? Your character's wrist is broken and it needs time to heal, and he'd rather die?
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
I wrote down, I wrote down Jaime Lannister is better, question mark. Like if Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones can handle a situation better than your PC can, you need to rethink about how your PC is.
Right.
Like Jaime learned how to re-sword
Like
fight.
that's just the conversation that I want to have. Like at that point, I'm uninviting JoJo from my table,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Because of like this is so unrealistic for how anyone would act in any fantasy, sci-fi, any scenario. You broke your wrist, so you die.
This is 100%. I'm taking my ball and going.
Yeah.
I can't have what I want.
and
so
I would
I'm going to mess things up.
Invite him to walk off the side of the ship.
But I do feel like
And he got what he wanted. That's the thing. He got rewarded for it.
Exactly. It's totally like the little kid who's throwing a tantrum or like whatever it is. Well, fine then. and then like you said, take your ball and go home or whatever. And it got its way. It's like again, not to bring it back to parenting, but it's fresh on my mind. Yes, my daughter, she's gotten so she doesn't like the podcast. I was telling them before the show. So she starts crying before the show and is like, Mama, don't do the podcast tonight. I don't want you to do the podcast. I want you to go put me to
always
bed.
digress about weird rules things, and I
I
don't
know.
want you to spend time out there with me.
So yeah, anyway, so it's very fresh on my mind. But that's exactly what he was doing. Like he either was going to tank the session and like tank everyone's vibe and like pull himself out of the game in a really like upsetting way. And he obviously knew the GM well enough to know that this would get his way. Yeah, he could push that boundary and they would give in.
Yeah.
And like me too, I think at this point I'd be like, oh wow, that's a really drastic decision. I guess we won't see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye. See ya.
Yeah.
Like-
I guess roll a new character.
No, I wouldn't have said
I
that.
wouldn't have it back. But I'd be like,
I want to digress just to a quick, like, I've had a similar horror story. Kimmy was there for at least part of it.
Oh yeah.
Where somebody walked out of my house where we were playing.
Yeah.
And the
That was
first
super awkward.
the first instant of this player, we were playing Masks. Masks is not known for killing. That's not a thing you do in the game.
Yeah.
And there was a NPC who was a bad guy, but was like a person, right? Like he had motivations and was doing stuff. And this player said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna kill him, right? Like this sucks that he did a bad thing, and I'm gonna kill him." And so meta, I said, "Okay, that's not really what this game is about, and that could come with a lot of repercussions. Like I don't want like." This could be, and what I should have said was, that's not what this game is about, right? That's on me, right? That's the point where I should have said, my dude, that's breaking theme. That doesn't happen in Young Justice. That doesn't happen in X-Men with adult cartoon, like grown-up X-Men don't murder people in the street, right? That's just, like, they had him subdued, and he was just gonna, like, killing blow, right? For no, like, the fight was over.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the part that's on me where Kimmy's talking about like the amount of responsibility that's on the GM. I should have just cut it off right there and said, we're going to stop the session. Like that's not happening in this. And if that's like really important to you that it happened, then we need to do something differently.
Yeah.
But instead I laid out the potential consequences. Then in character, several other players who were now into like playing along with the situation, in like speaking to his character, saying, "Don't do this. Please don't do this." One of the characters who was like sort of invincible put himself between that character and said, "You have to go through me to kill this thing," right? So he does it. And then the other characters are like, "I'm going to tackle him and so we can arrest him and do the thing." And he's like, what is this fucking gotcha, whatever? Like so incensed. Sorry if I was too loud.
No, it's fine.
But he was baffled
Yeah.
at our reactions.
Yeah.
Right? And we were baffled at his reaction. We're like, we have listed a several point argument of what's going to happen if you do this.
Yeah.
And to top it all off, like at that point, we just end and he leaves. And I go and meet with him for dinner at some point and talk to him about what happened. And like, here's what everybody else perceived and like what happened for you. And I'm like, this is like kind of a new friend. I'm like trying to figure out what happened, and, get him to come back to play another game where guess what? He blows up similarly where there's like a little dispute about a rule and literally walks out of my house and I've never spoken to him again.
Yeah.
This is before COVID.
Yeah.
Just got up, walked out
Left
of my
out,
house.
we all went,
Whoa.
okay, I guess that's done.
Yep. And
Wow.
so there was a level of that where right at the start of that, I should have said, "This is not what Masks is about, my dude.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. That's not this story,
Yeah.
right? I don't even want to deal with the potential repercussions because that's not our vibe,
Yeah.
right? We're doing a fun thing here with teenage superheroes, and that doesn't fit, right? So that's the part that's on me, and I should have just said, nope.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to have that conversation with a little bit of give and take, and sometimes you need just to lay down the boundary of this isn't going in our story.
Yeah.
Period.
I had a weird instance where we're playing a game called Badge Quest, which is
Yeah.
it's by this guy.
The scouting one, right?
Yeah,
Oh my god, that's not what I
Oh.
heard.
Badge
And
Quest.
I am very glad you clarified.
Oh.
Badge with a B.
I was
You
like,
get badges.
what
Mhm.
game are you
No,
talking
no,
about?
no.
Okay. Okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
no. It's-
My brain did not
it's-
hear that phrase.
Badges.
Yeah.
It's the Girl Scouts selling cookies to
Oh,
earn
fantastic.
badges.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I have a story
I was
about
worrying
that.
about your face. I was like, it's kind of a wholesome. What's
all
wrong?
right. It's pretty wholesome. It's about cryptids in the suburbs. It's
Yeah.
about like
Remind me of my bad story after the show.
Okay.
Okay. So these are these 12-year-old kids running around trying to solve mysteries while also trying to accomplish selling the most cookies.
Yeah.
And I had led the group to this like haunted house. They're gonna do a little like, oh no, what's on this house? And so I presented that like, oh, this ghost appears to you, but appears as the ghost of like a long dead relative who's like the meanest person in your like your and fair enough, like I didn't create guardrails, and this person goes like, oh, I think it was my grandpa, and I was like, great, the ghost of your grandpa. What is your grandpa like? And I was like, my grandpa, and then he like trigger warning, like he goes into like a child abuse moment. He's like, he used to
Jesus
beat me with
Christ.
a belt because he was a Nazi and he fought in World War II as a Nazi, and I was like, cool, hey.
Whoa.
And I was like, let's just take a pause. You know what? I actually don't think I want to have Nazis or child abuse in my game. I thought we had covered that before, but like, we'll just say this is a very grumpy old man. Is that okay? The person was like a little unsure why I did this,
Oh.
but it was interesting because it happened like an hour and a half into us playing
Uh-huh.
in a very cozy kind of fun. We're on bikes. We're like haggling people for the price of cookies.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, I have a Nazi who abused me. It's just like, hey, I don't think this is the vibe any of us are playing.
No.
And he was like, oh, okay. I think he was like a little embarrassed to
Yeah,
like kind of
vibe
brought
check.
this up.
Yeah.
But I think it was a little bit of like a joke that like, can you imagine if I like didn't rein him in at that moment?
Right.
What do the other players do?
Well, I'll tell you what
at the
happens when you
table?
don't rein them in right away.
Right,
They blow
yeah.
up your
Yeah,
whole
they
game.
love your game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just saying, it's like tough. I think it's like tough in those moments. I think we all play a lot of games, so we're kind of used to being like safety tools, ways to communicate. But we're all like facilitating stuff. I feel like I facilitate a lot of stuff. If you're like a new GM, I feel like this is the kind of thing that scares off people from trying GMing or even trying playing RPG games sometimes because they're just like, well, somebody's gonna come in and be an abusive Nazi grandpa, and you're like, well, why would I ever play that, right? So it is like I totally resonate with Costa because I feel like it's just really tricky to say no because you don't know what's going to happen if you haven't had experience with it.
Yeah, and I only tell my horror story because like it almost comes off like we're blaming Costa for all of what's happened here, which is not, right? But I only wanted to relate that, like, I was there, like I fucked up. And that's okay. That doesn't make me a bad person. It means, and this was before, like, I didn't really know about the X card at this point. We certainly didn't have Lines and Veils. This was before I made Demigod, so it had to be 2017, 2018.
You probably weren't doing section zeros of discussing themes ahead of time.
Certainly not. No.
I think this is before you came on Happy Jacks, or you just started at the
I think
time.
I had just started.
Yeah,
Because we
somewhere
were
there.
definitely doing a lot of gym stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, but anyway, I had been GMing for 25 years at that point, right? This was 10 years ago, let's say, whatever it was. I was a very experienced GM. I knew how to tell a story. I knew how to get characters together. I knew how to have a scene form. And I knew how to explain the consequences of what an action could mean. And it didn't occur to me that having all that information wouldn't be enough. And that I needed to just enforce the theme of the game and say no.
Yeah. And it gets really tough when you're in a game with friends.
Yeah.
Like the person in our thing was like a new friend of ours. Like we'd been hanging out with them. It wasn't like they had just been invited we had other social connections with them and things like that. So that starts adding layers of pressure onto it too. When you're like, well, I don't want to just say like no and like piss them off because maybe other people in the game who are their friends might get pissed off. Like there's so much complication. But again, like I feel like it's just easier to just sometimes just nip it in the bud right then, do it there, like whatever it takes. And if you end up with a little bit of fallout, it's better than a lot of fallout later.
Yeah.
Like stop the growth. I'm out of metaphors. I'm very tired.
Yeah. I don't want to say I empathize with Peter in this story as much because Peter definitely like had opportunities to recover and didn't, and also like mess the game for everybody else. And the tantrum, especially with the self-harm aspect, really bothers me. But I will say that like when I was newer to playing role-playing games, especially on streams where it was for an audience and there's a narrative that's like really the heavy part of it, I don't think I was ever as bad as Peter. But I definitely had a couple of times where like what I understood the story to be coming into it was not what it ended up being once we got to a certain point. And so like I may have stubbornly tried to hold on to the narrative that I had in my head. Like I played in a stream back in like the late 2010s. It was one of my first times ever on a stream that wasn't like a one shot for whatever. And I had been told over and over again it was going to be very film noir. And so I played a femme fatale character, and I made this very chaotic, neutral character on purpose for that reason. Everybody else who played the game made a character who was a good aligned character and was like very like lawful and very like on the side of their organization and stuff like that. And so it was a little bit rough because I was playing this very like gray morality character. And the thing is, all these characters fit into the setting. It wasn't like your situation where it wouldn't make sense to have it there, but my character definitely stuck out like a sore thumb, and it led to several occasions, especially in the first half of the game, like first few half of like the first season, where we butted heads a lot because of like what I had been told going in, what I built the character, how other people have built their characters. And it did come to a position where I finally had to, like, after having a lot of conversations with my GM, I kind of finally had to go, okay, we need to find a way, and my GM too, like how to make this group work cohesively. And so like we found a narrative reason for my character to want to work with the people more, like even though they didn't like necessarily follow her morality point of view. Like she thought they were all being naive, being like goody two shoes law people, but like she was given a reason, like you should work with them because your quest does involve them and they will help you out. And I did have to like take a real like dark night of the soul of myself and be like, hey, you're being the problem player at the table. Like, what can you do to fix this? And what I did was like, I had to sit and think about it and go, okay, well, what impact does working with this group of people have on this character? And so like, as I leveled up with her and built her stats out, I kind of like, oh, her wisdom went up, or she actually got her wisdom improved by this magical thing. I was like, well, she's more wise. How would that impact her? And I actually like changed how I role played the character as like character growth to be
Mhm.
like, oh, the like goodness of these other characters has rubbed off on her,
Mm.
and I actually like role played it so that she would change to become a good aligned character. And so like I think that is the kind of thing that like as you role play more and you recognize situations, like I don't think it's I don't want to like say that I'm on the same level as Peter here, but I recognize in Peter problems of myself when I was like a less mature player or when I wasn't as sure how to get into gaming and stuff like that, where you feel like you've seen the road you're going down and you're so stuck, you're so committed to that road
Mhm.
that you don't understand that like you're impacting the way the other players are being affected by it and the way the story's being affected. So as much as I want to be like, screw this guy, he's a baby or whatever, like there is that part of my brain, but there is part of me that like I hope that other people listening who have been a Peter in the past, first of all, I hope you got your estrogen baby girl. No, not Peter, not this Peter. That's a dumb joke. People in the past who have been this person or recognize elements of themselves in this story, like please know that like we're not trying to like belittle you or demean you, like but like look at it as a way of like, have I been this person? What can I do to improve it? And like I think that there is like I think that you can end up becoming a much better role player. And it's like a lot of us have started from flawed positions and improved. So
I mean, I would say
I'm running. I'm spiraling on my own wheels now.
No,
Sorry.
it's
but
really
like,
lovely.
even in this
Yeah.
circumstance, I would say, where was the GM?
Mhm.
Like when all these characters were made and it was supposed to be film noir and we had all these good guys and one chaotic neutral, as the GM, I'm like, oh fuck, I fucked up. You know, like I need
And
to
to your-
explain something,
To
right?
your point, that GM and I like we had a pretty big falling out for a long time, and only this year did we finally like
Well,
have a conversation about like
Right.
the issues we
So
had.
I don't necessarily mean that like them specifically, but
Yeah.
but there's a point where like you made something basically like I assume you made your characters separate from when everyone else made their character.
Yeah, we didn't have a session 0. We all kind of made our characters separately, and it ended up being
Right.
Yeah.
And see, like that's also kind of a rookie mistake especially for a stream game where you really need everything to just hit
Yeah.
and be cohesive in whatever way it's going to be cohesive. And so for the GM to not like orchestrate this character creation process of like, ooh, hey, before we get going, Riley, everybody kind of made a good aligned character. Can we tweak this? Or hey, everybody, you're all really goody two shoes, and I said film noir, so that ain't it.
Mhm.
Like, have you seen the Maltese Falcon? Like,
Yeah.
he's not a good guy.
Right.
That kind of stuff that's where the GM has to take some responsibility.
Mhm.
Again, like phase 1, phase 2, Peter here are the GM's responsibility.
Mhm.
The phase 3, phase 4
No.
Peter tells me there's nothing the GM could have done.
Yes.
Mhm.
yeah.
Hardly anything they could do except uninvite them.
Yeah, that is the uninviting stage of the game. Yes. All right. Good job. Good job. Good team.
And for my sake, I've actually never made a mistake or played a character poorly or run a game poorly. I've just was born this good and I've always been this good.
Mhm.
Thank you for joining us for season 34, episode 22 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please tune in again. I promise it's not I'm just kidding.
It's not going to be that full of bullshit.
all the time. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of bullshit. Not usually quite that stacked quite that high, but no, just kidding. I love you.
No, no,
All right.
I was bullshitting.
I know. Okay, yeah. So for reals though, thank you for joining us for season 34, episode 22 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Megan Dawson Joffe of Nerdy City Games. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. Host names.
So sorry.
Sorry, you made me
Sorry.
distract me. I was like, host names. Oh, wait,
Sorry.
no, I'm
Just
not
a
reading
reminder for me to take a cholesterol medication. Everyone, I have to take cholesterol medication
I
right
do
now.
too. Not right now, but
No, I'll take it later, or I'll forget about it.
All
Oh,
right.
so sorry.
My name is Kimmy.
My name is Artem.
My name is Riley.
I'm Jason. Are we plugging things?
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Follow me on Twitch at It's Probably Okay. I stream there usually Wednesdays and Thursdays. If I'm not there, it's because grad school overwhelmed me. However, as of this week, it's December 8th. By the end of this week, I'll be on winter break, and I'll probably be streaming more than is healthy. But come hang out with me. I like to have fun stuff there. Hoping to spin up a new campaign here soon, which we'll learn about more. And follow Die RPG Friday mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So it's a little different time slot. There's a lot of fun stuff happening there. Lloyd is GMing for us. We've got Noir, we've got Vixie, we've got Sam.
That's a good lineup.
It is a very good, like,
Shame you guys all fight on camera.
it's
like
an
that.
all-star cast. But it is, we also had this incredible Session 0 that was pre-Session 0. It was like a Session -1 that was not broadcast, right?
Yeah.
It was like, hey, this is difficult and complicated and can be shitty, and we need to make it good because we all care about each other. And that was also a nice place to start from. Like, oh, we all care about each other. Oh, that's interesting. Empathy and dignity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
While we're plugging stuff, we have now launched my actual play of Scum and Villainy, which is called Good Chaotic, and we launched it in I think October or late September. But we got multiple episodes now going for it, and we're already recorded up through I think May. So we're really going strong with it, and I will say it's the same cast for my Doctor Who role-playing game I used to do called The Game of Rassilon. It's called Good Chaotic, and it is some of the most fun I've ever had at a table, and I really love playing with this group of friends of mine, and we are having just the greatest fun of taking this same group that is coagulated around the previous game and telling our own IP and our own stories, and we've gotten some really wild things that have happened in this game, and some of the things that happened tonight, I can't talk about what happened because I will spoil story, but there are moments where, unlike this thing, we had characters who were put in very difficult positions and things broke really badly, but it all broke badly because of like dice, the dice being chaotic and the dice being evil and moments being, but like it has led to some really fun and interesting things. So the show is called Good Chaotic. I'm extremely proud of it, and I would love it if people who will give a listen. It's all podcast. Each episode's about an hour long, and like I said, we release every 2 weeks, and we are recorded all the way up for the next like 6 months. So you're not going to get a dip in our program.
That's
hour-long
amazing.
podcast is so bite-sized and delicious. I love those.
But I will say with Doctor Who, like we were always stressing to get like a 12-episode season out every year, and it was really tough. And this year we've recorded enough to basically we're pretty confident we're going to be able to get like at least a whole year worth of content ready to go. So
Love
Great.
it.
That is incredible. I'm gonna definitely check it out. I would also love to plug an actual play that I'm currently running on this wonderful network.
What?
Yes, it's called What About Bobs? It's a Mouse Ritter RPG actual play. It's got a lot of story game elements that are tossed into it. And it's got a stellar cast. We've got Bill, Terry, Kai, Joey. Everyone's absolutely precious and adorable and so deep and so sweet. We play mice. We play mice in a little wilderness setting who are kind of dealing with a world that's so much bigger than them. Everything is bigger than a mouse in the forest. It's a really fun and exciting game, and we're just about approaching session 3 or like 2 because we kind of had session 0 that then flowed into session 1. So we're really early on in the game, and it's really, really lovely. And that's on Tuesday nights here. 7 p.m. Pacific. And I'd also love to plug my podcast and vodcast, as the kids are calling it. But it's a show I have that's a podcast and also on YouTube, where I pair a favorite sandwich of mine with a unique horror movie. And me and my guests, we discuss and digest the layers and the meanings of the sandwich of the movie. It's called Scary Movie and a Sandwich. It's hard-hitting stuff.
Oh, I wish I talked. I remember you talking. And I meant to. We'll talk off mic.
But I'm so excited because I
messed up.
finally was able to like launch it. I'm up to episode 4 right now. I literally just like released it before coming here, so I'm having a blast. So yeah, check out What About Bob's and check out Scary Movie and a Sandwich.
Amazing. I'm Kimmy, and I'm here a lot. Today, we're going to leave you with a song called...
Literally live here.
Yeah, literally live here. literally.
Oh, wow.
We're going to leave you with a song called Raise Your Pints by the Dread Crew of Oddwood, and you can find them at thedreadcrewofoddwood.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week. All right, bye.
Bye.
treasure.